Okay, we're just around the corner from the Cyberkinetics neuroprosthetic old office building, and I'm standing in the Veteran Cemetery for Fort Douglas. It's important to know that a lot of the sort of advanced technological research is also directed at veterans, both people who have suffered injury in military conflicts, as well as the mental health of veterans. So this is the site of a fort that was established during the Civil War era. Fort Douglas was created ostensibly to protect the Pony Express and then the telegraph wires. And that was critical to the Civil War. And in terms of asymmetrical warfare, the indigenous people of this area would often actually go and try to bring down the wires, the communication wires. So they created the fort to secure those systems, those telecommunication systems. So again, today we're sitting in a telecom research test bed, but with the legacy of these older communication systems that rode the rail lines on the telegraph. And then the other piece was that the military was there to keep an eye on the settlers of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, because there was an uneasy relationship between the federal government and Brigham Young at the time. And so there was sort of a dual purpose installation. So the fort was active off and on during World War I. It was an internment camp for 900 Germans. And before that, in the Spanish-American War, there was a group of black soldiers that trained here that were sent to Cuba. And then during World War II, it was coordinated with the Air Force bases. There's 2 Air Force bases in Salt Lake City. And then there are a lot of other defense interests around, including military hospitals, chemical and biological weapons testing systems, ordnance systems, and there were lots of payment systems going through. So Fort Douglas was a clearinghouse for the financial processing of many, many checks, like the daily minutia, to keep the war running. And one of the people who was involved and who was at Fort Douglas at the time, his name was Sam Walton, and that's Sam Walton of Walmart. He, I guess, had a heart condition and was not shipped overseas, but he had stateside service, and he was working in intelligence, and he was doing security around the Air Force bases, but it was in conjunction with Fort Douglas. And so I think it's interesting to consider that so much of today's fourth industrial revolution directly relates to, technologies and systems that were put into place during World War II. What made Walmart so successful is around sourcing, cheap sourcing, and supply chain tracking. And so to me, Sam Walton's history, connecting to Fort Douglas, connecting here in Salt Lake region, and understanding what connections he might have made as an intelligence officer for the U.S. Army during World War II, it raises a lot of questions in my mind. So, I think this backdrop, again, it weaves together the history that the history of asymmetrical warfare between the settlers, between the original people of the region, of the telecommunication infrastructure, of the militarized space, and then the fact that, again, bringing up to today, there was a sign coming in that said only, for Veterans Affairs business only. And so the Veterans Affairs office is a central area where there is a lot of experimentation happening on often people who are pretty vulnerable and in bad situations, and because they've been harmed in conflict, they become guinea pigs for these new technologies, all ostensibly to better their situation. But those are very vulnerable communities, and communities that are going to be set up specifically for impact investing, both in their physical abilities as well as the mental health treatment. And we'll talk about that a little bit later with the Huntsman Psychiatric Institute up the hill.